Congressman Derek Kilmer, along with 3 other Congress members, proposed a constitutional amendment to temporarily fill House vacancies. Now, the congressmen say it will ensure congressional continuity and reduce the incentive for political violence.
So under the Constitution currently, House vacancies are filled by special elections, but those generally take anywhere from 3 to 4 months. Congressman Kilmer joins us this morning from Gig Harbor to continue the conversation. Congressman, nice to have you with us again.
You bet. Good to be with you.
So talk about this constitutional amendment being proposed and the changes that it would entail here.
Yeah. Let me say up front, I swear I'm still a fun hang, even if I talk about mass casualty events and the hypothetical collapse of Congress. But let me talk about the problem statement up front. You just pointed out in the opening, right now, the only way to fill a congressional vacancy in the House is through special election. And those take on average about 3 to 4 months. Now, let me give you 2 scenarios. One we saw, and that was a shooter with bad intentions showing up at a congressional baseball practice and shooting Steve Scalise. Now, just imagine in the current environment where there's a very tight majority in the House, that person having better aim. And horrifically, you could literally see the majority flip in the House for 3 to 4 months if, God forbid, some of my colleagues were killed. The other frightening scenario is perhaps lower probability, but if it happens, it is really a problem, and that is a mass casualty event. So everybody who shows up at the State of the Union thinks at least for a second about the designated survivor situation, and it's always a discussion by the media about the executive branch having a designated survivor. But under the rules as they currently exist, if God forbid something happened, just for example, in the State of the Union, Congress would consist of only the people who skipped it. So you'd have a Congress for 3 to 4 months of maybe 10 to 15 members of the House. So you'd be in a situation where you had a international crisis with a legislative body that really would lack any sense of credibility or standing with the American people. So what our proposal is that upon someone's election, they would submit 5 names, and presumably they would be people of their own party, which gets rid of this incentive for political violence. They'd submit 5 names to the governor of their state and to the House, and if they died in office, a temporary replacement would be chosen from that list of 5 until a special election could be held.
2 examples you gave definitely just painted a grim picture of why this is such a concern. So my next question is, how would the change reduce the incentive for political violence?
Well, here's the thing. So, right now, one, you have this potential for several months where a majority could flip. And second, there's concerns because in some states, if you just said, well, leave it up to the governor to pick, sometimes the governor is of a different party. And so you don't want to have that incentive for someone to pick off a member of Congress with the hope that their governor would pick someone of a different party and flip a majority. And so the value of the proposal that we have, and we've worked with stakeholders across the ideological spectrum, the value of it is it's up to the member of Congress to list 5 people. Presumably, they would be people from their own party. And so when that temporary replacement would occur, waiting for a special election, the governor would pick from that list. And presumably, that list would be people from the deceased member's own party. That eliminates the incentive for political violence because you're not flipping any majorities in that circumstance.
Congressman, I have to ask, why this now? And, considering you're proposing a constitutional amendment, which can be tough to pass given the requirements,
Yeah.
What sort of support are you seeing for this? Is there any likelihood that it would actually pass?
Well, in terms of why now, unfortunately, we've seen a massive increase in physical threats to members of Congress. The Sergeant at Arms of the House, the Capitol Police have reported a massive, massive increase in threats of political violence. And I think we're playing with fire. Unfortunately, we've also seen some high-profile examples, the shooting on the baseball field. You had Republicans go to a retreat a few years ago, and their train hit a truck on the tracks and could have derailed and could have killed a whole bunch of members of the House. The reality is every time, the Texas delegation flies home after votes, you're playing with fire. And so thankfully, there's been bipartisan support for this, Democrats and Republicans. Brad Wenstrup is my Republican partner on this. He was on the baseball field when a shooter shot Steve Scalise. He is a physician. He treated Steve Scalise until first responders could arrive. And I think that's part of his passion for dealing with this, as he has seen, and unfortunately we have seen, the threat in real time. Constitutional amendments are hard to pass, but interestingly, a constitutional amendment was passed to address continuity of the Senate. That has not occurred for the House, and I think, and my colleagues and I think, that this is the right time to do this, and thankfully there's support from Democrats and Republicans to do it.
Congressman, just to switch gears a little bit, we mentioned that you're back home right now for this weekend.
Yeah.
I know celebrating a daughter's birthday recently. Any projects or things your constituents should know about that you're working on right now, other than what we were just discussing?
There's a whole bunch, and the good news is, Congress finally passed a spending bill a couple weeks ago, far too late, but within that bill, there were really important projects. Just 2 days ago, I was out at the Naval Shipyard in Bremerton, substantial funding for seismic upgrades at the shipyard. 3 days ago, I was with the Quileute tribe and the Ho tribe. Thankfully, there's some funding now for helping some of those coastal tribes move to higher ground. I know one of the concerns for folks in our region is housing affordability, and thankfully we were able to secure some funding for housing. That's a big deal. As we look moving away from the rearview mirror towards the windshield, one of my big priorities is trying to help communities that have been left behind economically. I passed a new law called the Recompete Act, which sets up a program through the Economic Development Administration to provide some federal help to communities that have been struggling economically. Excitingly, that program is kicked off. The Economic Development Administration has identified 22 regions of our country to get a little extra help. And excitingly, one of those regions is the Olympic Peninsula. And so we're working very actively with folks up in Clallam and Jefferson County. They are also eligible. They're finalists for a big implementation grant that could be up to $50 million for economic development projects. That's a big deal. It's the part of the reason I got into public service in the first place. I was just a grumpy economic development guy who wanted to see communities be able to have more economic opportunity. And so that, in terms of the work of my office, is a big priority.
Wow, well, you certainly got your hands full. Rep. Kilmer, thank you so much for joining us this morning on ARC Seattle.
You bet. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.